In 1946, Lewis published an essay in Strand Magazine titled A Christmas Sermon to Pagans. And yesterday I read the sermon to you, and today I would like to offer a reflection on it. First, a little Christmas coffee. I believe Lewis's essay has three main points to it. The first is this: the West is mostly full of post Christians rather than pagans or pre Christians. And there is a great difference between the two. In order to evangelize in the 21st century, you've got to get this right. So Lewis wants to make sure that he knows that England at his time, he believes, was not really full of pagans. And so even though maybe the editor wanted him to write to pagans, to pagan England, he's like, no, we are post-Christians, and there's a big difference. He gives really two contrasting images. He says that a post-Christian is more of like a widow who has lost a spouse, while a pagan is more of like an unmarried girl. Another image that he gives is that a post-Christian is like a collapsed home or an abandoned parking lot with broken glass and stray cats, while a pagan is like a prairie or a field with flowers and herbs, and it's this beautiful place waiting for a kingdom or a home to be built upon it. He says that, yeah, both of these will not keep you from the rain, whether that be a parking lot or a field, but there's a big difference between the two. For Lewis, the pagan world was ripe with meaning, while the post-Christian world has been widowed of meaning. There has been a collapse of meaning. The pagan world was ripe with ritual and symbolism, feasting and fasting, but it was missing its source. True Christianity, the real thing, what I call barrel-aged faith, is the fulfillment of paganism. Christ really answers what paganism is looking for, what it's searching for. The post-Christian world, on the other hand, believes that Christ has been tried and found wanting. Oh, we tried Christ, we tried Christianity, we tried that whole thing, and it's left us still wanting. Before C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton also spoke to post-Christian England. He writes, "The Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried." And so Chesterton, with that quote, is talking to post-Christians who think, oh, we've tried Christ. We're done with that whole experiment. The post-Christian world is not altogether non-Christian, but rather it believes that Christ and Christianity can be reconfigured and reconstructed for a new world. The new social scientists, the sociologists, the psychologists shape it rather than it shaping us. One of my favorite musicians, Rich Mullins, wrote a song called Creed, based upon the Apostles' Creed, which has a line that says, "I did not make it. No, it is making me. It is the very truth of God, not the invention of any man." Post-Christianity wants the opposite. It desires a new kind of Christianity that it can control. But here's the big problem. If we are the ones shaping it, it ceases to even be Christianity, whose foundation is Jesus is Lord. Read the book of Acts. That's the foundation of Christianity, is declaring that Jesus is Lord, surrendering, placing your faith in him, giving him your allegiance, repenting from your former lifestyle, and adopting his lifestyle, entering into his kingdom. So we lose Christianity if we are Lord and he is not. This new age can be shaped either by scientism or neo-pagan magic. Lewis says that both are, in a sense, post-Christian. He writes about this in The Abolition of Man. And in my interview on C.S. Lewis Reading Day, I actually quote this.
It would be awesome to have each of you share either a favorite Lewis quotation or just tell us a little bit about what Lewis means to you. And let's start with Kyle, because you were the first person on the stream. So
I decided to go to Abolition of Man. He says on page 77, "For the wise men of old, the cardinal problem had been how to conform the soul to reality. But for now, for magic and applied sciences, or scientism, alike the problem is how to subdue reality to the wishes of men." And so if you're conforming yourself to reality, that's further up and further into, transcendent reality to our Lord himself. Whether you're into neo-paganism, like many today, or scientism, that's all about manipulating and controlling reality. And so Lewis, of course, is a prophet, always pushing us into what it means to be fully human, which it means to be conformed to Christ's image. Point number 2, the ramifications of a post-Christian world rejecting Christ and a universe filled with objective moral meaning will result in the abolition of man. There is a crisis in the post-Christian world when it comes to the big questions. What is a human? What is marriage? What is a man? What is a woman? What is morality? Where do we come from and where are we going? What is meaningful? These are all huge philosophical questions, and postmodernity and post-Christianity believes that they are not really, truly, objectively answerable. It doesn't mean that post-Christians are just all atheists. But on the other hand, they're not really cool with everybody being a radical believer. That would be too fundamentalist, too radical, maybe even irrational. Instead, the post-Christian world would rather everyone be sort of like a kind agnostic that kind of believes or thinks that they want to believe, but maybe there's not enough evidence. Or they, at best, want nice believers who let things be how they will be. You believe what you want to believe, love how you want to love, and I'll just let you be. The post-Christian world wants a world where everyone flows with the stream rather than swimming up against it. With this imagery, we should heed G.K. Chesterton's words as he states, "A dead thing can go with the stream, but only a living thing can go against it." In Lewis's framework, mankind is the one floating down the stream, the abolition of man, the destruction and loss of what a human being is. But instead of seeking a cure, we are in a celebration of our new liberation from the past. We're celebrating our deadness in a sense, the culture of death, but we're blind to knowing that we are dead. Lewis writes there are three kinds of people in the world. Number one, those who are sick and don't know it, the post-Christians. Number two, those who are sick and know it, the pagans. And number three, those who have found the cure. So what hope does a post-Christian world have, which is so blind to its own sickness? Lewis believes that passing through ancient paganism might just help. Perhaps the post-Christian world must discover again that the world is really truly filled with spirits, both good and evil, that the pagans knew so well before we can discover the Lord of spirits. Point number three, Christians must become pagans again in order to rediscover the enchantment of Christ and Christmas. Now, Lewis doesn't mean we should be intentional about repaganizing the world. No, he's a Christian. He doesn't believe in paganism. But in a sense, he believes it might be inevitable and a necessary step for the gospel to once again take hold in the hearts of men. 80 years after Lewis wrote this sermon, it is indeed like coming to pass. Many young people are children of millennials who don't believe in anything. They're nuns. They don't practice religion. These children, they don't really know Christ. They barely have any interaction with Christian culture at all. They can name the four houses of Harry Potter before even dreaming of naming the four Gospels. Actually, there was a study done, and this very stat was brought forth. Their mom might go to yoga, sell crystals on Etsy. They may follow young, cool, hip witches on Witch Talk. The young are becoming a sort of a strange blend of like post-Christian and ancient pagan right before our eyes. They aren't really pagans of old because they are still fully in control of this process. They choose their experiences online. There is no objective right or wrong, which the gods hold us accountable to. But yet, there is still this potential movement from post-Christianity through paganism. They've sort of got one foot in, one foot in the other. And there's this potential movement for this younger generations to pass through post-Christianity, through paganism, and back to Christ in the Nativity. A great example of how Lewis describes this passing of like from post-Christian through paganism back to Christianity is the recent Christian convert, Paul Kingsnorth. If I've got his biography correct, Paul grew up as an agnostic in England. He didn't care for the church all that much, maybe even disliked it. He became popular as a writer and eco-activist who eventually became immersed in Wiccan. It was here that as a post-Christian, he discovered something of paganism, ritual, communal celebration, but he also found something else in those dark woods, the spirits of old that he could not control. This led him to a crisis. What is actually beyond the forest in the material world if there really are truly spirits? He uncomfortably began to have dreams of Christ, which was another source of old paganism. Here was another spirit or phantom he could not control, nor an experience he could choose. Rather, it was happening to him, like a thunderstorm rolling over your home. It's not an experience you choose, it just happens to you. This eventually led him to the doorsteps of Christianity, and literally to an Orthodox monastery, where he discovered something quite ancient, wild, untamed. It was here that he became acquainted with Christ, the Lord of spirits. Paul Kingsnorth and others like him, such as Michael Warren Davis, a Satanist turned Eastern Catholic, are becoming powerful evangelists for today's emerging generations of neo-pagans. In closing, perhaps we should look to the nativity scene to teach us a lesson about what Lewis is talking about in his Christmas sermon to pagans. We all know it's best to be like Mary and Joseph in the nativity, adoring the Christ child, or at least even the shepherds who are believing, Jews within the people of God seeking their Messiah. But if we cannot be them, then let us at least be the pagan magi, the three kings who have come to seek the origin of the star. Although their journey is a longer way, it is still a way. Their pagan astrology though riddled with error, was still used by providence, by God, to lead them to bow before the Christ child. But let us reject the way of King Herod, who maybe we should call the first post-Christian. Yes, he heard the good news both from believing Jew and searching pagan, but he rejected it. He wanted to be king and to build his own temple, his own sort of Tower of Babel, if you will. He wanted to define his own meaning and reconstruct the story of God's people to his own liking. Though King Herod's tomb survives to this day, it is forgotten generally. While the tomb of the Christ child has been highly venerated for centuries and has become the source of our salvation, the king of the post-Christians has died, but the king of the shepherds and the pagan kings has come back to life and offered eternal life to us all. So let us join the believing shepherds, or at least be the pagan seekers, and do a very old-fashioned and very pagan thing, to sing and feast because God has been born. Thanks for joining me for my short reflection on C.S. Lewis's Christmas sermon. Have a Merry Christmas. Spend time with your family, and don't forget to go to Mass or Divine Liturgy and worship the Christ child. God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.